Hey everyone, welcome to Ecosystem Session. It's the 25th of May 2022, and we've got Moritz Beerling today. Hey Moritz, how you doing?
Doing well. Glad to be on.
Yeah, great to see you. So just excited to basically reconnect and hear what you're up to. And for those who don't know Moritz, he's been in and amongst the team and Holochain ecosystem for years and years and years. Since when did you discover Holochain, Moritz?
I was already aware of the efforts behind Holochain and the MetaCurrency project and Scepter from around 2014.
Yep.
So when Holochain became its own thing and was spun out of that, I definitely paid close attention and have been involved since then.
2014, what kind of things were you paying attention to in 2014 to build your awareness around Holochain, MetaCurrency, Scepter, etc.?
Oh, all kinds of weird stuff. I had been studying sort of all kinds of heterodox theories of politics and philosophy and economics and all these things. And in some of these internet intrepid explorations, I think MetaCurrency and their work on currency design and Scepter with this weird technological substrate that nobody else was talking about came up. And so I just couldn't help but pay attention to the interesting combination of deep thought and technical competency that those documents and those materials betrayed. And then I reached out and got in touch with Fernanda, Art, Eric, and all the rest of them.
Cool. Well, so it's been around 8 years then.
In a way, and I guess Holochain became more of sort of its own project, I think around 2016, sort of not really publicly much yet, but sort of more volunteer and contributor oriented discussions at that time. And then 2017, when it sort of was more brought to a wider eye, both with the release of the earliest versions as well as then the work in anticipation of the ICO for Holo. But that was the time that I became very active in tracking the discussions, relaying some of those ideas to my audience on Facebook and other social media, and really seeking the conversation with a wider sphere than just the tech geeks.
Cool. Well, and I know you've been really active over the last few months, which is one of the reasons I was very keen to. Usually on ecosystem sessions, we focus on someone who building technology. But in a way you are, because you're catalyzing the building of technology and tools. You're also helping and supporting different groups, whether that's really early idea stage, where etc. So and one of the concepts we haven't talked about too much on an ecosystem session, but certainly you and I have talked about a ton, is kind of the idea of what does embody agent centricity with mutual sovereignty look like? What do we look like as human beings? Is we're interfacing in a world of Holochain applications, and I think there's you've had a commitment to live and operate like that since I've known you. So just be really cool to hear what you've been up to, what you're excited about, etc.
Yeah, gladly. In the previous ecosystem sessions, I do recognize many of the people that come there have a specific project they're bringing and they're relaying sort of the updates. There are some of those as well that I'm involved in. For example, there's Clutter, which is sort of the Holochain-based Twitter clone that was already built with the very first version of Holochain back in 2017, I believe.
Yep.
And that we've been rebuilding sort of since about December last year on the newest version of RSM. And that's, I can show you the current version of that, or at least one version that's currently publicly available for people who want to go through the process of using the launcher and then installing the webpack file. But yeah, talking about sort of the wider ecosystem participation, let's say, and URMI, similar kinds of roles and logic that we show up in that space. Being activated by the philosophy and the capacities that the technology unlocks on a wider scale myself, I find that in the Holochain system fairly uniquely, there's this problem that often people have when they look at it from the outside and they wonder what is going on, and it doesn't seem like it is very legible. It's not very easily surveyable and understandable. There are these 500 projects, there is this ecosystem fund, there is this blockchain explorer and all these things, because people mostly or many people find it from the blockchain space, but then are perplexed as to not find all of the same kinds of institutions or tools with which to explore it. So I think I would like to sort of say a bit to those kinds of people, if they're watching this, take your time to, I would say, reach out to specific people that you see active in the space, and look for the conversation spaces, like, for example, the DevHC Discord that I created, which is a sort of project and building oriented space. Look for the forum, perhaps, although that's been a little bit less active, I think, partially since the creation of the Discord server. I think so. It's partially my fault. And yeah, just create individual conversations and connections with the people that are active in the space. And I think you'll find that a much more useful way of traversing the space and understanding what this technology has in store, maybe also for you and your projects, rather than sort of looking, where do I apply to get money to fund my thing, or what are the publicly visible sort of institutions. So that's one word there. But yeah, how I've been showing up in this space has been, basically exactly like that, creating those connections to people, listening to what they're themselves interested in, and then looking for ways that I can connect their interest with the resources, the people, the tools that they can use to advance in their own sphere in the direction that they themselves find valuable. And then look how Holochain and the resources latent in this ecosystem can support them in doing that. And that doesn't always have to look like, now build everything on Holochain. Oftentimes it can look like, okay, maybe you are an enterprise, and maybe you have plenty of existing customers and collaborator relationships and partners. And so maybe it's not the best idea to build an entire application from scratch with Holochain. Maybe it's more like, take something you're already doing, look how you might be extending that a little bit, or something that's not very well working right now, or something that could use some added resiliency or agent centricity, and then take that piece and rebuild it in Holochain, and then see how it works, learn the concepts, learn the ways to use the tools, and then build that competency up slowly. And then you will be ready by the time that Holochain has the official beta stamp on it to sort of go further in integrating it into your normal operations. On the other hand, for this kind of startup or community-oriented space, I think there's a bit more leeway that they have in using the technology right now already, which is to, yes, build those MVPs, but then also in smaller contexts, you have less on the line. You have a bit more freedom to fail, let's say. And so I think in that case, it's very useful to already use the sort of slightly clunky but still fairly powerful apps that have been developed in the ecosystem already, like Where, like Clutter, like Place I've seen now, and Notebooks. Sort of they're 0.1 versions of fully featured apps, but they are still fairly powerful if you have a good enough reason to use them.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So you've been up to a lot. Like, can we start with, can you show us Clutter a little bit? And we,
of course.
Because I've noticed you pop up on Telegram every now and then and talk about it. So I'm sure people are very excited to see, and then also can hopefully like give people a bit of sense of how to get the launcher, how to install a web app, how to play on Clutter a little bit.
Definitely. I've been trying to share a screen, so I think you'll have to give me permission.
Oh no, it should be free.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, then let's see. Let's go to Safari. Oh, I gotta enable my own permissions. 1 second. Oh, now it wants me to quit and reopen Zoom. Well, that's fun. I guess we'll have to do that. I'll be right back, I guess.
Cool.
Let's see. Okay, cool. So this is Clutter. I think you can see the screen.
Yeah, I sure can.
It's very basic. Again, like don't compare this to Twitter and all its glory of functionality and noise as well. But as you see, this is a very calm, welcome screen. We have the ability to look at our own profile. I guess I already went through the creation process, but we can go ahead and start anew if you want to, and go through the actual process of installing it.
you know what? I think it's okay.
Great.
I think it's okay. I think.
Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have basic profile. You can add your profile picture. You can have a nickname and a display name. You can have a bio and a location, and all of these are required to actually get a username or get a user there. Then you have your muse, and we still keep a little bit of that weird branding flavor in there, because Clutter itself is a name used to designate a group of cats. Yeah. And so we like to play with Mew instead of tweet. And so I can just say hi to David. System session. And as you can see, we also have the sort of hashtag underlining. So that is true for hashtags. We have that for cash tags as well, with the $sign before that. And we also have plans to enable that for all kinds of sort of folksonomy tagging systems, if you will. There is also a GitHub repository that you can go to learn more about the project and to understand its current form. This is the releases page where you can download the actual webApp file to install on the launcher. And if you look at the code, you can ignore the sort of technical speak here, but the documentation for it is also available in the specs file here, and there you can see a little bit more about what we have planned with it. We have most of the stuff done for the first version, and once we have that, which should probably happen within the next month or so, we plan to show it to a wider audience, invite the participation of the community, and then also get it on the Dev Hub in the launcher, as well as hopefully onto the sort of test Holo hosting infrastructure. Awesome. So that people can use it just like they would Elemental Chess at the moment, and then play with something that is a bit more social than only chat. And we do also think that this is a good prototype to show to the Blue Sky community, which is sort of Twitter's open source community that sponsors or not necessarily sponsors, but invites people within the sort of Web3 and distributed web space to experiment on transitioning parts of Twitter onto open source architectures and sort of open source technologies. So we're hoping to have that conversation through Paul and some of the people involved there. There you go. That's Clutter.
Very cool. All right, we're going to have a special live session on Clutter, maybe when you get to. I think probably around the time where we're offering it up as a test app on Holo.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. So do you want to explain to people? So how are you helping the team at Clutter? How are you working with them? What are the kind of things you're doing? How are you catalyzing?
Well, that's the fun thing. There's not really the team in that sense. It's more of a community effort, and Art and I have been sort of collaborating on stewarding the project through community participation, which looked mostly like having one dev, Joost, who is part of the Holo team, pretty consistently work on the front end side of it, and then so he's volunteering his time, and then we also have. We've organized, I think, 2 hackathons by now, or sort of collabathons, where the wider community came together on 1 or 2 days on a weekend and just looked at what is there to do right now, then people spinning off into small groups to work on that, and then building it sort of in more concerted efforts, while then also over time doing sort of a little bit here and there. So it's more of a community collaboration than a dedicated team. And that's also what we want. We're currently considering how to sort of carry it forward into the future. Once the first version is out, how do we make it a long-term support project? And we're considering to basically invite a wider set of stakeholders, like, for example, the people in the Atom or Perspectivism project with Nico Luck, maybe Connor Higgins, Connor Turland, and a bunch of other people who are sort of pillars of the ecosystem to basically oversee it and to invite that community to continue to collaborate on it. Part of that is also still waiting on the some features in Holochain that will make it easier to migrate between versions, because as we know, it's not really feasible to have a social network transition between updates and then sort of lose all the content or have that not be an easy transition point. So that's something we're still hoping to make as easy before we approach wider participation. But that would be the plan. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, well, I hope that's giving everyone a sense of kind of like the breadth and the scope and how you're working. So do you want to go a little bit deeper into another environment outside Clutter, something that you're particularly excited about?
Yes, I think Atom and perspectivism and the app perspective and part of that is very interesting. I mean, I was at their recent team retreat in Düsseldorf, where we did a bunch of work on, well, first of all, deciding not to do an ICO instead of doing one, which had been a plan, but more importantly, to take the project as it is right now and to really commit to doing more sort of dog fooding and making the technology as useful as it can be for the purposes of the team itself, so that we know it can be useful to others as well. And just for those who haven't heard of Atom or Perspectivism yet, it's basically a project started by one of the previous Holochain core developers, Nicolas Luck, who actually built the first version of Holochain alongside Eric and Art back in the day. And who spun out some time ago to build his own project, Atom, which basically takes a lot of the very same ideas of Holochain and sort of formalizes them into something called an agent-centric ontology, and then makes it possible to plug in all kinds of technologies, Holochain included, into that kind of way of seeing the world and having those technologies really play well and nice with each other. And I think this is a really crucial element and infrastructure itself that can really get us over this hump of seeing it as a competitive sport between these technologies and more of okay, I have this problem or this use case. How do I use the philosophy and the sort of the components of these different technologies to create an infrastructure that really delivers on that use case or on the solution to that problem, and rather than how does this look like if I just I need to commit now to doing everything on Holochain, doing everything on Ethereum or something like that.
Yeah. It's definitely a sign of maturity, isn't it, across the ecosystem, that we're looking at hybrids, and the beauty of that is to understand what's best for what purpose. And I think we're just, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what Holochain's best at. But I think like coming with the assumption that it's going to be best at a series of things, but not everything, is a way more mature assumption, and it allows people to go deeper into its strengths rather than worry about why it doesn't do something it was never designed to do.
That's right.
You know what I mean? I think like it's interesting, isn't it, when you think about things like the stages of a conversation, but it's literally like the world's been in a conversation, or different people in the world have been in a conversation with Holochain, and the conversation I'm noticing has matured or is maturing. Because when you ask it, when over time it will be something that we don't imagine, or that some people have imagined, but nothing starts like that. And so to expect it to be something that it isn't at this stage is not effective for anyone. So
right. I remember you and I working on sort of how to evolve the narrative back in 2019 around Holochain, and I remember we went through a couple of stages with microservices and all these different paradigms. But I think you're exactly right. It's a good sign of maturity, even though we don't yet have the official beta stamp on the technology itself, that at least the ecosystem and the people that are active within it see it more as what niche can this fill in this project, rather than how do I make it everything Holochain now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly like you described. It fills a niche, and then the niche expands and extends, and then it's like, oh well, it's going to make way more sense to plug this in than do this, and so you can start to see how, but it's actually really interesting, isn't it? Because part of what you're saying is writing like a single Holochain application to replace a single like centralized or blockchain application doesn't make sense, which
Right.
I mean, to think about it now, it's kind of obvious. I probably should have seen this in like 2018 because like how could something from a different paradigm basically replace like line of code for line of code the current paradigm? Of course, the build process, everything's going to look different. So
right. And I think there are a couple of other projects that I also want to briefly maybe sort of spotlight that I think bring home this point. Like one of them is, I mean, this is not really yet a formal project, but it's something that I just earlier today on Discord discussed with somebody who himself only recently became aware of Holochain and was sort of excited to talk about, which is mobile Holochain effectively. And one of the problems that, of course, Holochain has in reaching a wider audience is making it as easy as possible for people to access the tools built with Holochain on the devices that they use most of the time, which are the mobile devices. And so, of course, one of the ways around that is Holo itself to do the hosting, so that when you're using Holochain app through your mobile phone, you're not doing it by downloading it itself, but rather accessing it through sort of the hosted version. But another one would be sort of for those people, at least, who are slightly more technically competent or interested to, for example, themselves run a local server that they have at home, sort of like a Holoport kind of, that itself runs your Holochain apps locally at home, but then sort of opens up or tunnels those Holochain apps to your local device through some specific means. We haven't really yet decided how to do that or figured it out, but that is a very obvious and possibly simple way of making it possible for some people who want to get there earlier, let's say, to use Holochain apps on the go without having to run them on their phone. So just these kind of creative solutions that get around some of these limitations can make a lot of sense if you're willing to sort of deal with the technical complexity. What else? Right. Another one that Art and I are sort of discussing and that some people have already thought quite a bit about is sort of a namespace app. And it's called Rival. That's at least the project name at the moment for sort of rival res data, kind of the idea behind it. And it could effectively go into the direction of something like the Ethereum name service or the domain name service, ENS or DNS. But of course, with the Holochain spin in a way. But it can also do things like, for example, many of these apps that are now going to be developed or already being developed, like Clutter, like other social applications, they will want to have some kind of profile or name resolution, let's say, for, okay, I want to have @BeerlingM, like my normal moniker in these apps. And so one thing that we're doing in Clutter is when you join, you get to choose your own sort of handle, but it's not exclusive. So when you search for it on the DHT, there might be multiple people with the same handle, which of course then presents a problem. Okay, you don't have the exclusive handle, but a business model for Clutter might, for example, be that you can buy your own handle for, I don't know, $5 or something like that. And then you have the exclusive handles of domain, if you will, on that. And this kind of business model, I think, could be extrapolated across more of these kinds of social applications where you want to have that claim on it, which is kind of a little bit like the NFT, I think, dynamic where people want to own something, but still it's available to many other people and sort of usable. So, yeah.
Interesting. Very cool. Yeah,
this is one of the problems. This is one of the problems that the sort of this more open or common centric technology has is how do you justify and how do you corral people to basically pay you for things? Of course, you can still make your case and you can erect barriers to participation, or you can sort of get creative about giving certain useful things that don't really curtail your capacity to participate meaningfully, but still give you something that you feel good about giving up some resources for the support to the project.
I'm tracking the Rival conversations with interest, and especially the model, because I think I mean, I think it'll be really interesting. And I think, again, anyone watching, or anyone who's playing with holochain applications, it will be fascinating to see people's response and reactions, because I have got a feeling people will be really keen to do that, to put a claim on, particular names or handles in applications. And also it starts to point, so what I love so much about the conversation and what you've been up to is, again, if I go back to 2018, 2019, and we're trying to do things like describe business models that can be on holochain, that's all fine. What's actually way more engaging, isn't it, is now we're at this point where we can actually experiment with a potential business model. And I know the Holo USB thing in a lot of ways didn't go well, but I think it touches both of what you just described with mobile holochain and Rival potentially, which is what's a complementary way to get to market, or get to market sooner, or a lighter touch solution, etc., to also give people the ongoing experience. There's not a monolithic thing like the Holo organization that knows everything. That's actually right. A healthy ecosystem is a really broad, varied, and vibrant ecosystem. Then the other thing it starts to point to is okay, well, what are the business models? And hardware has been one business model so far that's been relatively successful across the whole chain ecosystem. Early days, I can imagine hardware is going to be stupendously successful. The other thing, because I know, again, there'll be a lot of people that are watching that may have been participating in that or are frustrated, but I wanted to just jump on now, is especially in your world, Moritz, in art's world, because many people will look at art as a steward or the steward of the holochain ecosystem. But if we also look art is an innovator, and so an innovator is going to be constantly at the edge. And in my way, I wouldn't say I'm an innovator in the same way, but I'm definitely on the edge of relationships, drawing people into the ecosystem, embodied ways of working. And so across the three of us and others, I guess the natural thing is we are going to do things at times that don't work. And so, yeah, maybe some signaling. I'd love to just explore that a little bit with you, but what does it look like when when stewards of the ecosystem continue to be on the edge? I guess what's how do we balance that, both stewarding this ecosystem as well as innovating? And yeah, that's probably well, I know how I balance it. You never stop innovating, and then you just up front and explain what works, and some things work, some things don't, and you just continue to learn. But anyway, I just thought that was an interesting thing to broach as well while we're here.
Definitely. I think one of the most important things you can do is, one, speak very clearly and truthfully about things all along the way as early as possible, and also after mistakes happen, and don't represent things in a way that are too strongly oriented towards convincing people, and more oriented towards inviting participation or explaining or sort of offerings if you have them. This was one of the things where I was slightly surprised when the sale came about of the USBs before I thought we were at a stage where we could do that. But because I was not myself a decision maker in this project, but more of a a steward, a forward mover of the early conception, my name carries some weight as well in this community. And so that's the thing I would say to the people who are wondering what that was about and what happened there. I felt good about participation up until the point where it went too fast for my own liking. Now, some people like the going very fast and go fast and break things in the Silicon Valley mode, if you will. And I think there were differing perceptions about how to go about rolling out a project that weren't clearly talked about internally in advance of that release. And so I think that's the thing that broke down that communication a little bit, so that people felt people didn't feel completely good about giving up their money basically only on the promise or on the involvement of the kinds of people that were involved, like Art, like myself. So, but I still, because I put my name behind it and I stand by that, I have an interest in this actually being delivered with integrity. And so I'm still continuing to make connections to people that might have the technical capacity to actually deliver this and bring them to Sarah and Edward's attention, and basically hope that or contribute to it working out, even though it may be from more of a bit of a distance. So, but I think in general, in the ecosystem itself, you're right. Like people like us who are more on the edge and who are doing more experimental things, yes, speaking truthfully, making clear what the relationships are that you have to these different projects, inviting feedback and responding to feedback as well, and basically just owning mistakes when they happen. I think this was one of them where it wasn't as done with integrity as I would have hoped.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. And I think like there's this, we're never going to fully unpack this because there's this weird balance between, as you just said, like operating in this way and in a way kind of like being involved with things that shake that is not a bad thing. Even though, again, for externally, like I think what people are looking for is signal value. Anything that Moritz touches is gold. Whereas, right, like actually, if you're on the edge, like half of what you touch is not going to be gold, you know.
Right.
But what we'll get over time by doing that is really hopefully really amazing stuff with amazing people. What we do know is
right,
we do have really incredible people around this ecosystem and brilliant ideas.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. I mean, I do want to preserve the capacity of the people in this ecosystem to feel good about participating in it. And I think that comes from knowing that they can trust the actions of the people that have a prominent position in it. And I think it's even more important than to sort of work hard to deserve that and to therefore take in their feedback. So that's what I would invite people to do, to reach out when they see things and to seek the conversation, and then basically just to continue going back into relationship rather than sort of saying, oh, now everything is bad.
Yep. Yeah, well, you're definitely living that model.
I try to. Failing all along the way.
Super. Well, is there anything else you'd like us to cover today or you'd like people to know about?
I mean, there's one more thing that I think, so it's just a theoretical concept at the moment, but I think it would be interesting to explore more for the ecosystem, which is this idea of instead of using equity that what we see in the startup world a lot, using sort of what I call flow shares in rolling out a project to the world. And basically, the basic idea is they're always, if you take this currency design worldview and lens that Art and Eric use a lot to actually design not only the technology, but also the sort of social and economic structure around these things, then you can sort of think of resources coming into the sort of the body of a social organism like a group, and resources going out, let's say. And so one thing that I think will help the ecosystem on the whole is for more of these projects to take slight parts of the resources that come to a particular group and automatically or through some kind of commitment redirect small parts of those resources to other groups in the ecosystem. And that way we have sort of a mutual support structure where you don't have to own equity or you don't have to own things in a legal entity, but you do have sort of nominal or technological claims to resources that come your way. And we can do that in an automated way through blockchain means, but I think also more and more than through holochain technologies as they come online, the currencies.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's like an evolution of the Web3 thing, which is basically a funded startup also becomes like a treasury manager and a venture capital business, right, as well. And that is explicit. This dumb, but I think the real innovations there will come as more of those flows models are adopted, So it's not just about early access to token projects, but it's about the distribution of revenues and all of those kind of things. And I think that's
Right.
what you're pointing to. And then with Holochain, you can go even deeper with Holo REA or like different
Right.
value flows, etc., where you can, literally be appreciating everybody whose work you're building on in several different dimensions.
Right. And I guess I'll leave with 2 points. One is, from what I can tell, DAOs themselves look like there's actually a very small minority of the people who are nominally within a DAO participating in a DAO, and we should expect that from organizational theory forever. And so I think of DAOs more like technological boards, like company boards, effectively, that make sure there are corrective mechanisms for bad management, let's say, but not really the governing and enacting structures of an organization as much. And the other thing then is that I am curious to explore the possibility of something like a host DAO, if you will, or sort of host association, where Holo hosts come together to build tools for each other, to share information, to build resources, and to, where appropriate, pool small amounts of resources to fund this developer to build that, or to recognize this contribution in another way. So I'm inviting the community, the wider community, to get in touch with me if they find that prospect interesting, and then to explore that with me.
Yeah, 100%. I would love, like, however I can help you with that, I would love, because like one of the I can't remember where it was, but sometime in 2019, I was really just sitting there reflecting on like the Holo host diaspora, and like what that community will really look like, what it looks like now, and what it will really look like, and the breadth of humanity there, and the connections and all of those kind of things. So like, and I think it's just we've been so focused on the Holochain community as well as getting all the technology ready, and we've think about the hosts as like making sure hosts, crowd Kickstarter supporters, etc., are all valued, making sure that incentives are all lined up when the hosting network goes to beta and all those kind of things. All amazing. But I remember the first time we had I think it was an AMA with a few hosts when we were doing some of the alpha testing, and seeing people's eyes light up, and as the Aurora light comes on, it's a pretty magical experience. And so I think you're right. I think it's like that's a real remarkable community to be cultivating.
And I think it will be crucial for that to come from the community rather from the organization itself. And I think it's important to do that also starting now, because very not too long, so the hosting infrastructure will be available for wider participation. And I think the Holo plan has always been to slowly but progressively hand over responsibility to the community, where the community is showing the capacity to bear that responsibility in the pursuit of sort of building this new web. And I think this kind of conversation and structure could start to build that conversation.
Yep, perfect. It sounds amazing.
Cool.
Super. Okay. Well, thanks, Moritz. It was great to
pleasure.
see you. Look forward to seeing you again. Yeah, it's amazing to see the vibrancy, and hopefully everyone watching, I guess if you've got any questions or comments, probably Telegram, Holochain forum for me or Moritz rather than the YouTube comments. But yeah, just thank you so much for what you're doing. Amazing. This has been since 2014 to you, and love the energy and some of the ideas and things that are coming through.
Yeah, get in touch with me on Twitter, and I hope in the next ecosystem session I can say get in touch with me on Kletter.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. With a handle that's been coordinated through Rival.
That's right.
Cool.
Thanks, David.
Thanks very much.